I suppose some of you have heard of my work with the Catholic worker movement, yes? Well, I have to say that along with my daughter and my grandchildren, it is my greatest joy. Well, some of you look a little befuddled as to what the Catholic worker movement is. Well, most basically, it's a social, political, and cultural movement I helped found in the height of the Great Depression, 1933. Would you like to hear more about it?
Absolutely.
Oh. Well, I have to warn you, it might take a little while. It's not only the story of my vocation, it's also the story of my love affair with God. Very well, then. I was born November 8th, 1897, in Brooklyn. My father was a newspaperman, very strict. He only let us read classics in the house. My sister and I used to smuggle in romances. My parents didn't offer us any formal religious education. In fact, it was my neighbor, Mrs. Barrett, that provided my first encounter with God. One morning, I was going over to my friend Catherine's house to play. And as I burst in the front room, I came across Mrs. Barrett on her knees praying beside her bed. Sensing my presence, she turned to me without any embarrassment and told me where I could find Catherine. Well, I immediately felt this immense love towards her that I've never forgotten. Through the mystery and ritual of prayer, she had God, and there was beauty and joy in her life. As a young girl, I had another formidable and fortuitous run-in with God after my family had moved to Berkeley for my father's job. My sister had found an old Bible in the attic, and we were using it to play school. I was the teacher. As I read from the book, I had this overwhelming feeling of curiosity and gratitude. I was being introduced to someone, and I knew almost at once that it was God. Something, isn't it? My family and I, we were still living in the San Francisco Bay Area when the 1906 earthquake hit. The gratitude and immense love of the people of the Bay Area, it really affected my 8-year-old mind. I was so inspired. My father's office burnt down directly after the earthquake hit. I can still picture the devastation. So we were on our way to Chicago, to a new life in another city within a week. We moved into a tenement flat over a tavern on Chicago's south side. It was a big step down in our world, and I understood the feeling people have when they feel that they have failed in their efforts. I was just 9 when I started walking the poor neighborhoods there in Chicago. I had just finished reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and I was fascinated by the topic. It depicts working class poor in the meatpacking industry in Chicago, the hopelessness felt by many of the workers, the lack of social support, and the horrid working and living conditions. That book connected me to the poor. I understood that our country was unjust, and my conscience was being stirred. Well, I took that feeling with me to college at the University of Illinois in Urbana. Unsatisfied by academic life, I left after 2 years and I moved to New York City. I started writing for newspapers such as the socialist paper, The Call. I started attending rallies and strikes and protests. I was arrested with other women for picketing the White House for suffragism. I just wanted all people to be treated fairly. While I was in jail, I rediscovered the Bible, and I felt comforted by the stories, the ones in the gospel, the corporal works of mercy, such as feed the poor and shelter the homeless. They resonated with the call I kept encountering. I tried to persuade myself that I was reading for literary enjoyment. But the words of Scripture kept echoing in my heart. I prayed, and I did not know I prayed. When I got back to New York, I continued freelance writing, and I entered the lovely life of Greenwich Village with other writers, such as the great playwright Eugene O'Neill. As we gathered there at the Gold